Okay, hello everyone to this Sparta's session.
Today we have Aneta Rostkowska with us, and she's going to talk about her curatorial and artistic practice. So yeah, hi from Düsseldorf, and
yeah, you in Cologne in the temporary gallery, I guess.
Yes. They're streaming from the office.
Great. Yeah, the talk, we don't know how long it will take, but afterwards we'll have the Q&A as always, and we will post the link in the video description.
And maybe a little note, Aneta is going to read out one of her texts, and you find the link to the text if you want to read it with us in the description from the YouTube video.
Okay. You can start now.
Okay, so good evening. Thank you very much for this invitation. I'm really very happy to be here and to do this stream from my office, where I spent a lot of time and tell you a little bit about my work. I decided to make this lecture a bit more experimental and not to use this kind of boring traditional format of just explaining things and showing many images, and thought, since the theme of the whole series of these events is narrativity and storytelling, I thought maybe I will share with you something that I wrote, because of course I'm a curator. I'm running this CCA temporary gallery in Cologne, but I'm also I really like to write, and very often in the exhibition that I'm curating, there are certain narrative structures, or I'm using short stories, novels, or curatorial texts take form of short stories or continuations of existing stories. So I thought this would be a proper introduction to my work. What is also important to say is that I actually studied philosophy for almost 10 years. And I was trained in this kind of a very, I would say, rigid analytical writing style, I would say, and I also had a blog at the very beginning about contemporary art, where I was writing about exhibitions in Krakow and lots of comments on the art scene and so on. And I wanted to have always these very long analytical entries in my blog. So it was quite a challenge to do it, but I did it for a few years. But somehow afterwards, in the course of years, I would say I had a kind of a emancipatory path, and I was freeing myself from this kind of rigidity of a scientific text, and from this kind of, I think, illusion that you can be precise, like 100% precise. And I started to really take more and more pleasure in writing more experimental texts, like short stories, poems. And so very often when I'm asked to write a text, I always try to check if something more experimental is possible. And very often it is. So yeah, so this text that I will read today, it was a text that I wrote in 2014 in Amsterdam. And it's a text that is related to the project that I was doing together with my colleagues, Emma Panza, Lara Khaldi, Kate Strain, Chris Dittel, and Renata Cervetto. We were both doing the curatorial course, and during this course we had to curate a project. and we curated an exhibition basically at the Apple in Amsterdam. And part of the work was also a 1 day of events at Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam, where we curated like a 1 day program. And that was, of course, a great opportunity, a big museum. And just to explain more about the background of this text, because I think then it will be easier to understand it. Our whole project in Amsterdam was referring to an unrealized exhibition of situationist movement at the Stedelijk in the end of the 50s. And what they proposed was to build a labyrinth in the museum. And in this labyrinth, they wanted to do like a reflection on the city of Amsterdam that in the 50s was still quite conservative. But somehow it was not possible. There are different theories why this project was not realized. For sure, they were asked to consult their labyrinth with fire brigade because the museum was afraid that there would be a fire. And also they were asked to get money from a royal foundation, which was particularly offending for them because it was, this Marxist artists and philosophers, why they should ask money, from royal foundation. So this exhibition happened. And part of this, our project was this 1 day at Stedelijk Museum, and we decided to disperse a smell there, a smell of fire. And for that, we worked with 2 artists, Janek Simond and Laurent David Garnier. Laurent David is a professional perfume maker, but also a very good artist. And he made the smell for us. And 1 week before this event, the museum withdrew from our project. They refused to disperse the smell. They were afraid that it will cause damage to the artworks from the collection, which was a bit ridiculous because, it's a smell, it evaporates immediately. It doesn't have any other consistence than smells from museums, cafe, any other type of substance. So we could not realize this project. And in the end, we dispersed the smell at the Apple Art Center. And then we had, at Stedelijk, we had some writers working with us, commenting on this history of unrealized labyrinth, this kind of tension between artists and museums and so on. And these texts are all in the link that you have in the description of this YouTube footage, this YouTube video. I actually link to the whole publication that was issued after the whole project. But somehow, we were all annoyed, and we had a feeling that the history kind of repeated somehow itself, because first the situationists were kind of could not work in this museum, and then our group was also kind of censored, or there was this fear of art, of this dangerous artwork. So for our final publication, I decided let's work a little bit with this theme, and I wrote a text which is like a review. It's a review, but it's a Gonzo review. It's a review in the spirit of Gonzo journalism that I think I will talk more about it, which is very subjective type of journalism associated, for example, with Hunter Thompson, American, that probably many of you know him, a really crazy guy that was writing amazing text in which a kind of analysis of what's happening is mixed with his own life and what he's doing. And it's a lot about, of course, taking drugs and taking alcohol. So it's this kind of a very subjective journalism, but it's also quite, I would say, politically aware. There are interesting political digressions, and so I really like his writing and was very inspired by it. So this review is written a bit in the spirit of Gonzo journalism, and this review describes the smell installation as if it happened at Stedelijk Museum. So it's kind of what would happen if the museum really would allow for such an artwork to be presented there. So I will read this. I hope you will be able to understand me. Of course, I'm not an English native speaker, but I will try not to read too quickly. and during the reading, I will be showing different images that are related to my curatorial practice, that has some also artistic elements, or in which sometimes this border between the artistic and the curatorial is blurred or disappears. And after I read it, it's not a long text, it's like 2 pages, basically. I will come back to these images and explain them, to which projects that they are related, and so on. So I hope it will be a good introduction to the spirit of my curatorial approach. Okay, so I would start reading. Is the first slide visible? Okay, fantastic. Okay, great. That smell, a report of the olfactory installation Smell by Janek Simon in collaboration with Laurent David Garnier, as experienced in Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam on the 8th of June 2014 by Annette S. Thompson. Written for Freeze, a magazine for chill out art, published in July 2014, issue pages 10 to 12, text republished with the kind permission of whatever books. Oh, that smell. Can't you smell that smell? Oh, that smell. The smell of death surrounds you. This is a quote from a song, That Smell, by American hard rock band Labyrinth, that was released in 1977. So it's like the time of Hunter Thompson as well. Okay. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, I decided to go to the Stedelijk Museum to look at one of my favorite works from their collection, Richard Serra's Blank from 1978. Every time I feel a bit depressed or just fed up with reality, I go there to stare into that mesmerizing void between the 2 black squares. The rich and rough texture of the black forms reminds me of one of Marian's illustrations to Robert Flatt's Tractatus Utrisque Cosmi Majoris Silitat et Minoris Metaphysica from 1617, meant to represent the prime matter from which the world was created. Marianne's drawing was produced by means of putting down many black lines facing different directions, so it creates an impression of something pulsating, a mysterious potentiality, hidden in the matter from which all forms will emerge. Serra's installation works in a similar way. I don't know why, but staring into that blank space calms me down somehow. It frees me from being stuck in a difficult moment, so that I start to imagine the future in a much more positive way, as a realm of unknown possibilities that are just waiting to occur. So on this nice summery day, I entered the building, took a ticket from the machine, and was on my way to Serra's room, when suddenly I noticed some weird things happening in the museum. A man complaining at the ticket counter and wanting his money back. You cannot ensure proper conditions for experiencing artworks. A woman crying on a bench in the corridor close to the old museum's entrance. A group of frightened tourists rushing down the escalators, creating an impression of a surreal fast-forward move. A visitor reading a piece of paper, then crushing it and throwing it angrily on the floor. 2 teenagers performing a strange sequence of gesture, crawling on the ground, then imitating movements and sounds of animals, and then finally hitting each other on their left cheeks. An elderly couple complaining to one of the guards, "This museum is a labyrinth, we can never find our way here." A museum technician standing on a ladder in the chat room and manipulating something with the box in the wall. A curator walking to the same box and back by the ladder, behaving very annoyed. Guards quietly discussing something in a corner. A group of visitors sticking out their noses and following them as if in search of something, some of them sneezing heavily. While walking by the museum's cafe, I also noticed 2 young women laughing heavily over a sheet of paper. Ha ha ha, he's still busy trying. 6 young women rushed by me straight into the cinema room. One of them was barking furiously. Puzzled by the whole situation, I asked one of the guards what was going on. She explained to me that today the curatorial program of the Apple Arts Center was organizing some events in the museum. Apparently, some weird artistic olfactory installation on display in one of the rooms got out of control and infected the air conditioning system. The museum was afraid that it would affect the other artworks on display. The smell scared some visitors. One man even fainted. The Apple curatorial program, oh yes, these crazy little fuckers, arrogant curators from the Apple, yes, I know them. Since August, they were messing around in Amsterdam. I heard about some dinners at the Apple they organized. Apparently, the institution had problems with fire brigade afterwards, not to mention the cleaner of the Apple who decided to switch his job to another institution. I also immediately recalled that actually Hunter, the chief editor of this magazine, had just mentioned to me some events at the Stedelijk this week and suggested writing a report of them. Somehow I forgot about this, but then here I was, exactly when the whole thing was happening. She didn't tell me, however, that the artwork would be a smell. Probably she wasn't aware of the fact that I can't smell anything. This is a corona reference. Since my childhood, I suffer from a severe allergy that results in a congested nose and a lack of sense of smell. So how I was supposed to write about the artwork? I felt helpless and desperate. I really needed to earn some money, but at the same time, I didn't have any ability to actually experience the artwork. A relieving thought came to my head. Maybe I am actually most qualified to write about the olfactory installation, since without my subjectivity influencing the experience, I could collect the impressions of a range of visitors and write a proper, very objective review. I decided to make a short survey and ask some people about their impressions of the work. After a while, I already knew that the smell was perceived as chemical, disturbing, and intrusive, causing a feeling of catastrophe and anxiety and sensation of decay, similar to a smell of burnt fireworks. Created by Polish artist Janek Simon in collaboration with Laurent David Garnier, it was originally placed in Kronika Gallery of Contemporary Art in Bytom, Poland, in the context of an exhibition about the presence of a catastrophic thinking in our culture. The presentation at the Stedelijk referred to an unrealized situationist labyrinth at the museum proposed in 1959. Apparently, the museum accepted the situationist proposals on the condition that they would cooperate with the fire brigade and look for external financial support from a royal fund. The situationists instead withdrew, and the labyrinth remained an obscure but still exciting idea. Among its intriguing features, it was meant to literally open the museum to the outside world and challenge the visitors with critical contents and fake fog. The curators from the Apple Arts Center decided to disperse the smell around the museum together with some texts they commissioned. The whole event was accompanied by a performance by Dina Denish that also referred to situationist case. It seems that some kind of a invisible labyrinth was created, a structure consisting of the particles of smell and texts. It invoked an unrealized artwork and the danger it could pose to the museum. It made the visitors feel unsafe in a seemingly secure space of an art institution, as if some extremely subversive and stubborn spirit of art became out of control. On the other hand, it gave a feeling of something being closed, burned down, in the process of constructing a fixed identity of the museum. While taking the notes and reflecting upon the possible physical interactions of the smell with the artworks from the museum's collection, I suddenly heard, "You're standing next to the smell dispersion machine. Are you okay? How can you be there for such a long time?" I looked up and saw a museum guard speaking to me. "I can't feel the smell," I answered. but it still can affect you, you know. It contains harmful synthetic substances. I suggest you stand not so close to it. Really? Oh, then maybe I should go away. While saying these words, I immediately felt a weird sensation in my head. I stepped sideways and accidentally bumped with my face straight into the wall of Edvard Kienholz's The Binary, a massive life-size installation representing a bar in Los Angeles. By the way, it is supposed to be olfactory as well, containing smells of urine, beers, and cigars. My nose started to hurt, and small drops of blood fell on my white shoes. I made one step forward, almost fainting. "Are you okay?" the guard asked. "Yes, I think so," I answered, although I didn't feel well at all. "I think I will go outside for a while." I sat on the lawn opposite the museum, holding my head in my hands. After a short moment, despite the headache, I started to feel very excited, as if I wanted to have sex. I noticed that someone was sitting next to me. I was just about to ask him for a cigarette. After all, it happens rarely that we are so much attracted to a stranger, as I realized that it actually was a woman. She looked straight into my eyes, noticed my astonishment with a slight bit of amusement, and said, "It is Shalimar by Guerlain." I turned away a bit confused, recognizing the name of a famous French perfume house. I wasn't able to understand what was going on. Surely something weird happened in the museum that related to bumping into the Kienholz work. Maybe a part of the tissue that had accumulated in my nose over the years had gotten detached, unblocking some of my smelling buds. I managed to calm down a bit, only to get attracted to another object. This time it was the grass itself. I took some of the grass blades in my hand and crushed them between my fingers, inhaling extensively. I discovered a mix of an unknown ingredients. An image of a wooden balcony, completely overgrown with wine plants, came to my mind, causing a feeling of unexplainable security. It was as if something hiding in the void between Sarah's black squares finally entered reality and opened up for me. A reward or a curse. I felt drawn to the grass, so laid down on it and fell asleep. I woke up in the late afternoon. The woman had disappeared, leaving a feeling of an unrealized, again, possibility. The museum closed along with the one-day smell installation, making it inaccessible to me, although now for another reason than before. On my way home, I passed by a man sitting on a bench, talking on the phone. "Please don't ask me to reimagine the past," he said in a forceful tone. A fair but futile request, I thought. Then there is an editor's note. We decided to publish this review, although it is not very accurate. Actually, the installation of Simon and Garnier's smell was never realized at the Stedelijk Museum in Amsterdam because of its possible threat to museum's collection. While the texts have been disseminated around the museum and the performance took place on the same day, the installation was instead moved to the Apple Arts Center. Therefore, the whole review seems to be a result of a very vivid and convincing hallucination. Was the trip induced by the artwork itself or some weird drug produced in Amsterdam? Probably we will never know. So that's the story. I would love to read more exhibition reviews written like that. I'm not saying that I'm a great writer, you know. I'm really like a, you know, I'm not a professional writer at all. But I'm sometimes I'm missing, you know, a kind of a more experimental attitude to art reviews. So now I will come back to the images and talk about them a bit. I'll click to the beginning. And yeah, I will just give a kind of a parkour of my different projects, and it's not ordered according to years, but maybe it's more about different interests of mine. And I think, yeah, if you would be, a lot of this, of course, is related to temporary gallery in Cologne, but not everything. Like, for example, this one that I'm showing when I'm quoting this lyrics from the song, That Smell. This is actually, you could think that it's an artwork, but actually it isn't. It's a radio station in Krakow, which had a lot of this kind of a foam objects that are supposed to make the studio soundproof. And this was actually one of the first Gonzo performances that I did with two friends of mine, Jakub Wojnarowski and Jakub Skoczek, and it was, I think, in 2012. And this performance referred to another smell that is not so often present in art, namely sense of touch. And the title of this performance was "You Can't Touch This," that you probably recognize as a title of a very famous song of MC Hammer. You know, this is my childhood, the 90s. So I love the 90s. And basically what we did, I went to the studio because I had a collaboration with the radio station in Krakow and Radiofonia. And we had a colleague of ours had a program there every week, and we had a very intense exhibition project at CCR Bunkier Sztuki, and we basically also could use this radio station from time to time, this program, to present what we are doing. And then when I visited the studio, I noticed these objects. You know, there were many more in the space, and they really looked like minimalist sculptures. But I thought it's maybe like post-minimal art, because it's not, you know, concrete, but it's foam. They are very soft, and, you know, you can really enjoy touching them. So we decided to do a performance there, we called it curatorial performance. You can't touch this, because the audience could not touch them because they were not in the studio. And we decided to claim that we curated an exhibition in the radio station, and all these objects are artworks that we, you know, are showing in this exhibition. And since it's very hard to minimal sculpture, post-minimal art, it's not so easy for the viewer to understand. Yeah, so we decided that we'll be juxtaposing these pieces with very popular disco music from 80s and 90s. So for each piece we chose a song. For example, You Can't Touch This by MC Hammer, but also other songs, you know, like No Limits, you know, all this kind of I Saw the Sign. And we provided very sophisticated interpretations of the lyrics and of the sculptures. So it was always like a duo, music and sculpture. And during the performance, we were posting on Facebook photos of the sculptures and then listening to the music. This was a kind of a tribute to our, you know, to the music of our childhood, you know, which is like, you know, early like hip hop, Madonna, Michael Jackson is not politically correct anymore for a reason, of course, but we had a lot of Ace of Base, of course, and we really realized, we were even surprised ourselves, but the lyrics are quite complex, and also we analyzed, of course, music videos. They are really like, you know, they are like artworks. You know, we also had this amazing Army of Lovers. I don't know if you are this kind of like a kinky Swedish group that I think was really, I think it's an inspiration, became inspiration for many artists with their whole style. So this was the first, so this was, I would say, a beginning of some kind of a practice for me that was in between the curatorial and the artistic. And this is an image from temporary gallery. You know, this it's, of course, I was interested in matching the text and images in different way, and not only illustrations. But this is a little bit like a more illustration, because I'm talking about a summery day, and these are these amazing suns that you see in these pictures. Are drawings by Berber Lange, who is an amazing artist working in Cologne, and she's working in this atelier house Kat 18 that you might know, that has there are lots of treasures, I would say, artistic treasures there, and I try to collaborate with them regularly and show their art. So these are the summary sons of Bärbel Lange that were presented in an exhibition, my first exhibition at Temporary Gallery in 2019. I will talk more about it a bit later. That's the Stedelijk Museum of Amsterdam, a gigantic bathtub. That's how I would mention it. Nice museum, but has this history of censoring. But on the other hand, which art institution hasn't? Yeah, we can also talk about it later. But this really there seems to be like a kind of a eternal tension between art and art institutions, and it's always, for curators are usually in the midst of it, and you have to somehow, you want to work with artists, especially in bigger. That's why I prefer to work in smaller institutions. In bigger institutions, you have lots of procedures, lots of mechanisms, and I have a impression that sometimes it turns against art, especially against artists that don't work in this kind of a super structured way that is required by institutions, or artists that propose something that is completely outside of the scope of contemporary art paths. And then I was in this situation several times myself, and you want to give the best possible working conditions to the artist, but then your own institution, people there start to hate you because the PR department doesn't get information on time because the project is changing all the time. And so on and so on. So I was always on the side of the artists, but then you have to suffer a bit from time to time, I guess. This is the artwork that I'm mentioning in the story that I also really like, but it's of course also an example of an artwork that's very hard to represent in a photograph because you don't see the substance of this black drawings that Sarah made. And I have to say I'm quite. I had a quite long period of time when I was really into like this more abstract art forms, but now I have a feeling that it's at the time when they were created and the whole emergence of abstract art, it was very spiritual, it was also quite political, and now I have a feeling that contemporary abstract art is like doesn't have this theoretical base, so it's only about beautiful or interesting forms, and that's a pity, but maybe someone will invent or theorize the new abstraction. We will see. This is a very interesting representation from 17th century. This is a kind of a hobby that I share with my fellow Gonzo curator Jakub Wojnarowski. We love to look for examples of artworks that look like avant-garde art, but actually have been created much earlier. And this black square comes from this Tractatus of Robert Flatt, and it's basically a kind of a book about how the word emerged. And of course, if you want to show this kind of a story of the emergence of the word, and use maybe Christianity as a base or some Greek philosophical systems, then there's always this problem of showing this first, what was at the very beginning, because there was like, nothing, or there was something that had some kind of a formless substance. And then from that, all the visible forms, trees, I don't know, animals, plants, humans emerged, yeah? So necessarily this first representation is an abstract one, because there was, nothing concrete. And this is what this is supposed to show. It's a primary matter, a primary substance from which the forms emerged. So it's the formless, and of course it's really interesting that it's represented in this kind of a rigid form of the square. It's like quite a contradiction here, yeah. That the formless has a super, a rigid form. But some people say that this square, it's not the form, because it would be a paradox, something impossible for formless form. But it's like our eye. It's like it's like a hole through which we are looking at it. So this comes from us as viewers. Quite interesting interpretation. And what I really love about this drawing is we actually have one of these books in Krakow in the university library, so I could see it live. When you look closely at the picture, you see that it's drawn in a very particular way, like someone really put like hundreds of lines. So you have this feeling that something is like moving inside, that it's pulsating. So there is this kind of a potentiality that is about to, manifest itself soon. So that's what we are doing with Jakub. We are looking for these examples, and we are interested. And actually, if you read, for example, what Malevich was writing or saying about his black square, it's actually similar to the intention of this drawing. It's quite interesting. It's not so far away. So we really like to question this kind of statement of the avant-garde that we are, the rhetoric of the new beginning. We are doing something completely new. No, very often no. And our favorite example of this is this amazing group of artists that were active in the 19th century in Paris, called Les Arts Incohérents, incoherent arts, that were mocking the official salon art and were, for example, organizing exhibitions of sculptures out of food, or exhibition of drawings of people that cannot draw. That was the title. And they actually were the ones that appropriated Mona Lisa, because they produced a representation of Mona Lisa smoking a pipe before Duchamp. Or, for example, there is this great funeral march by Alphonse Allais, which doesn't have any music in it, like a proto, John Cage 433. So you can find a lot of examples of this, and it's quite interesting to track them, to trace them. This is another image of potentiality. It's an artwork by Roberta Snarkus, Turbulence Free, and it's actually ink. It's a black ink that is being boiled in the gallery and produces, of course, a quite strong smell. But it also produces these amazing forms and the surface. We also presented it at the Apple Amsterdam, and then I was showing it also in Krakow. Very nice artwork that also has interesting connotations, because it's this thing that you're supposed to use for writing, and then it's kind of evaporating. Then I'm talking about the museum again, and this image, it refers to this complaining of the man about not ensuring proper conditions for experiencing artwork. So here I thought it would be a good moment to talk a little bit about my approach to exhibition space, creating conditions for experiencing art. And this is an image from this first exhibition at Tempo that I already mentioned, Heart of an Old Crocodile Exploding Over a Small Town. And this is, I very often work with another person on exhibition design. And this person usually is Mateusz Okoński, who is a friend of mine, but also a sculptor that finished studies in sculpture at Academy of Fine Arts in Krakow. But he's also exhibition designer, curator, and also a collector. He has amazing collection at home also of old art. And what we really share, we are interested in creating more, I would say, friendly exhibition spaces, more immersive exhibition spaces. Of course, this is not something that is entirely new. You can very often, you can see it from time to time in bigger museums, this kind of a more colorful walls. But still, we have a feeling that the white cube still, is holding there very strongly. And I think it's also very interesting to ask why these spaces are so often white. Especially, I have an impression in Germany, I don't see a lot of curators working consciously with exhibition design. And I think it's really a pity, because I think you can really enhance the experience of the whole exhibition through it. And what we did here with this, first of all, this exhibition, Heart of an Old Crocodile Exploding Over a Small Town, was created around a group of paintings by a young Belgian painter, Bram de Munter. So for us, it was very important for the paintings to look good. And these paintings that are rather like this kind of a narrative representational paintings, they really don't look good on white walls, you know. So we thought, okay, let's do a strong color. We selected the color together with the painter. In general, we try to be in touch with artists because these exhibition environments, they are quite strong. So we want everyone to be on the same page, and we wanted artists to also, you know about what we want to do and have their opinion about it and change it. And also we selected these pink carpets and that destabilized the viewers a little bit, and also created a perfect Instagram setting, of course, for photos. But on the other hand, the viewer was a little bit, on the other hand, people really liked to come to the space and stay there. It was much more inviting than standard exhibition. On the other hand, it was like, walking on a red carpet suddenly, you know, so it was a bit destabilizing. And this is something that we find interesting, because in a lot of artworks, this perspective of the camera, of the viewer in this exhibition was destabilized, decentered. It was this kind of a abandoning of this more classical perspectival approach in which, you know, you are the center and you see everything. So we were, for example, also showing a movie by a sensory ethnography lab. Maybe you saw Leviathan, this amazing movie that they made with a camera attached to a fishing net that is moving together with the filmed object. So we were interested in this kind of, this whole exhibition was about these other approaches to environment, to nature, in which the human is not in this kind of a controlling king or person in authority anymore, but this kind of a more relation of inherence and belonging between us and the surrounding world. And it was also an experimental exhibition in that sense that it kind of it had this kind of a core consisting of the painting, but there were also several artists in it, and we also had this. So in a way, it was like a solo show that actually transformed into a group show. And since there was no team from the very beginning, but just this group of paintings, and then other artworks were selected, you know, according to, you know, if they matched the paintings or not, if they were on had a similar theme or not. And actually, the end result was an exhibition that had several themes, several interrelated themes, and I found it quite interesting because curatorially, you very often have this exhibition, you know. I call them Google exhibition, you know, you know what will be there, you know, there is a theme, and then of course you select artworks that match the theme, and that's nothing interesting comes out of that. Of course, the artworks are interesting, that's great, but you can also ask why this constellation was created, yeah. And I think if you work in a kind of a more intuitive, less discursive way, maybe then you can arrive at something that is you know, maybe a little bit newer, or some kind of a perspective that is not yet put into writing. This is something that I also like to try out from time to time. What is also important is that in this exhibition, I also presented the artwork that I'm talking about in the review. So it was presented in Amsterdam, but again, I wanted to have this sense of catastrophe in this exhibition as well, because in the paintings themselves, you can also see it. I will also show you some paintings from this exhibition. For example, this one. The short story is about this fear of fire in the museum, but in this exhibition, it was more about this kind of a sense of catastrophe concerning our natural environment. This kind of a sense of the world is a bit, you know, collapsing, climate crisis, and so on. For example, in this painting by Bram, you see this. The title of this painting is Botanical Garden, and then you see these circles of fire, so there is this kind of a feeling of an apocalypse. There is a guy that is like standing on his head, the dog that is standing on his head, some disruptions of perspectivity again. And what I like about this painting is that you also have this groups of people that are trying to people are trying to stay together, help one another. So I call them communities of care. So it's not only about the apocalypse that is coming, but it's also about doing something with it and trying to support one another. This is something that is also very, very important for me in my work. Exactly. So that's this exhibition. Then I'm talking about the tourists because I want to tell you about another Gonzo curating / artistic project that I'm still doing. And I hope it will also be presented at Temporary Gallery soon. And it's the CCA Wawel Castle, which is a semi-fictitious art institution on Wawel Hill in Krakow. I don't know if you have ever been to Krakow. One of the main tourist attraction is a big castle called Wawel, and people always go there, the tourists. And it's a very interesting place, quite a big place with several museums. It's all on a hill overlooking a river. And it's a very important place for Polish identity because there is a church there that you see in this image, a cathedral, in which you can find tombs of Polish kings. So it's a very symbolic place, very Catholic place, and it's a place that is not accessible for contemporary art. Especially, in 2012, it was really impossible to do anything there. And this kind of a Catholic conservative discourse was always very much present there. On the other hand, this place is, I would say, a kind of a total fake because it has been destroyed and reconstructed so many times that I don't know. There are very few things there that are, original and really old. So it's a little bit like a fake castle in the end. And at that time, me and my colleague Jakub Wojnarowski, we were invited to a festival of public art in Krakow to do a project. And the theme of this festival was Krakow as fortress, Krakow as stronghold. And we thought that, okay, this castle is a fortress for us. We cannot work there curatorially, artistically. It's a heavily controlled place. They have their own even tour guides. They have a school for tour guides. You cannot do any tour guides there. You need to have a permission. And we thought that it's also a place where there are many interesting things that are a little bit rejected by this kind of a dominant narrative. For example, there are quite many people that believe that in this castle there is a chakra, this Indian theory of chakras in your body, but there are also geographical chakras, that produce a lot of good energy. So a lot of people come to Krakow to visit this chakra on the Wawel Hill, and then they stand there in a particular place, which is believed to be close to the chakra, and they collect energy with their hands, spread. And the management of this place, of course, hates it because it's like this kind of a, neo-pagan belief that is in the heart of, Polish Catholic castle, yeah, the heart of this kind of a symbol, Catholic and national symbol. So they are always, trying. There's like a particular wall that it's believed, that behind this wall there is a chakra. So of course people touch it. You have a lot of, you can see that people are touching it. So they have these exhibitions, like on cardboards, and they try to put it always against this wall so that the wall is covered so that people don't touch it. And then for a while, even there was like a plaque there. There is no chakra here. But that was very, very funny, so they removed it. So we were thinking, okay, interesting, so that's also happening there, but it's kind of not being allowed. So we decided to conquer the castle. We decided let's do something there, although it's not allowed. And since it's impossible to do anything material there, there was like, for example, a few years ago, there was this Russian activist art group Wojna. They wanted to do action there. In 5 minutes it was over. The guards came and that's it. So we decided, okay, let's do it in a different way. Let's let's found an institution, an art institution there, a CCA that is located there, and let's build a collection of this CCA. So we invited around 15 artists to create artworks for the collection. But since you cannot do anything material, physical there, we thought, okay, let's appropriate selected elements of the castle, what already is there. Let's treat them as ready-mades, and let's claim that they are the artworks. So all of our artists, they created super interesting stories about the artworks that they did there. And in fact, the whole collection is a collection of ready-mades in the end. And we did a guided tour together with artists. For this guided tour, of course, we needed permission, but we didn't tell the castle the whole truth about the project. We told them that the artist will tell during the guided tour what kind of artworks they could do there. We didn't tell them that they will claim that they already produced those artworks. And we did this guided tour. And what was very important for us is that artists really researched the place, that we were not interested in jokes, like joking about the place, because, you can always, say that there is a cloud there, ha, 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 it's my artwork. Yeah? But we wanted really to have proper artworks. And in the end, we got really a very, very nice collection, very serious artworks. And then we did a guided tour and we presented all of them together with the artists. And this was also very interesting because for some of the artworks were a little bit maybe, absurd, or you can question them. Like, for example, one of artists, Piotr Świątoniowski, he claimed that he changed a genetic code of a bird that lives there. And it's true, these birds live there. There are these prey birds called pustulkas. And the name of this bird refers to a Russian word pustoi, which means empty. We don't know exactly the etymology, but it has to do with emptiness. So what this artist did, he claimed that he changed the genetic code of this bird. And this bird now dies on a particular day in a year. I think 16 November, I'm not sure. And it's a day that in Polish calendar, nothing important happened on this day. It's an empty day. It commemorates nothing. So then this poor bird is always dying there. So we thought if we will say that there is this artwork, and we had binoculars, we're watching the bird because it lives on this tower of the cathedral, that no one will believe it. But I have to say, the storytelling was very good, and there were some people after the tour that told us that what is this with these birds? It's really like it's not good for nature. It's really damaging animals and so on. And what is it? So that was an interesting experience. But in general, in this project, we are not interested in this kind of creation of a complete fake. We rather want to have an ambivalent situation in which people start to ask, is it really possible? Can you do contemporary art in this place? How open is this place? Are collaborations possible? What kind of discourses are dominant in this place? So we were rather interested in ambivalence, but we noticed, if the story is good, it's really like, people tend to believe it. I worked for a while as a tour guide in Krakow for several months, and I can tell you these tour guides, they are really like masters of storytelling, and they completely manipulate emotions of the groups of tourists that come to Krakow. They tell stories about how the Pope died and that everyone put a candle in a particular park in Krakow, and the tourists are crying. Yeah, so that's the art of the storytelling, I would say, in its kind of a most pragmatic sense. But anyway, so the CCA exists. And we will present this collection in temporary gallery soon. So it will be possible to come and see the exhibition. And we are doing this guided tours. There will be a website of the institution that will look like a website of a normal institution. And we hope that this collection will grow and that we will kind of, that we will be able to appropriate this castle completely, which in current political situation in Poland is even more important because, as you know, the rise of the right-wing political parties in Poland is very, intense, and the situation is getting more and more difficult for contemporary art as well. That's another image that I'm showing when I'm talking about the guards. And this comes from a gonzo performance that I did at National Gallery with Prague. This is my collaborator, Jakub Wojnarowski. This is interesting because so what we did at the castle, this kind of appropriation, we started to call it gonzo curating, in reference to Hunter Thompson, in reference to this kind of a very wild, practices of journalism, lifestyles, and so on. We also wrote a manifesto, something like a manifesto that is called Applied Gonzo Arts, in which we list different types of gonzo activities in the art world. It's easy to find it online. I think if you write gonzo curating, you will arrive on our blog, and it's there. And there we listed the different cases that we would qualify as gonzo. And these are like all this, artists putting their own artworks in museums while no one is watching, stuff like that, like this kind of a more activities that are a little bit questioning the art world, and its rigidity and its pompousness, things like that. So we started to call what we did at Wawel, we started to call it gonzo curating. And from time to time, we are invited to do a gonzo curating project elsewhere. So we are invited several times to appropriate art exhibitions. Like, for example, in Prague, there was an exhibition of an art prize, Jindřich Chalupecki Award. It's the most important prize for contemporary art in Czech Republic. And they nominate 5 artists, and one of them gets the prize. And then there is an exhibition of this artist. And it's interesting because the exhibition is in the most prestigious location in Prague, the National Gallery, big museum. But it's in this kind of an entrance hall. It's not in the places, that are inside, but it's in this kind of an entrance hall. And we thought it's very interesting because it's like a waiting room, a situation of a waiting room, and everyone wants to get a prize because they want to have a career. So we are kind of waiting for success, like 90% of people in the art world are waiting for success. So we did a guided tour around this exhibition, which was a performance in which we actually reflected on this whole situation of applying for the art prize, the mechanisms of art prizes, the arbitrariness of the art prize. We have to be 35 to apply. It's like ridiculous very often, this requirements, this kind of prioritizing artists of certain age, we felt that it's not good. And this is one of this performance is online. The documentation is online it's possible to find it on our Facebook website. And we played a lot with this kind of being the guards, and this plant in the middle was a symbol of a young artist, and we were carrying it with us through the whole exhibition and pushing it and playing a bit with this, doors and waiting. We used a short story of Franz Kafka about waiting in front of the door that never opens and stuff like that. It was quite funny, but also quite serious. And we claim that the artworks in the exhibition are about that. So we claim that they are about something entirely different than artists and curators were thinking. But they liked it. It was an interpretation. So that was a gonzo curating project. This is the Upper Art Center that is mentioned in the story. What I want to emphasize is this ugly white banner that you see. And this is actually an artwork by a Belgian artist based in the Netherlands, Reinhard van Hohe, who also likes to create fictitious institutions. And I'm actually officially employed in Kunsthalle Beijing, another fictitious institution that he created. Here we discovered that he has this banner with this kind of a rectangular, black rectangular form. And we thought, okay, let's do it. Let's contaminate the facade of the apple because it's so neat, beautiful. And we decided to put it there in this way to really kind of disrupt this kind of order and signal that something, is really going inside and is kind of disrupting the workings of this institution. And this was presented during our exhibition there, titled Father, Can't You See I'm Burning? Again, the burning and fire. And the whole project was inspired by this unrealized situationist discipline. And we did lots of interesting things there. One of what I want to talk about is an example is, for example, we noticed that our budget was not super big. It was okay, but was not super big. And we discovered that the institution spends a lot of money to paint the walls for every exhibition, because it's not a white cube. It's, you know, it's like a house, and really, you know, you have to really put a lot of effort into creating a white cube inside of it. So they were painting the walls, painting the staircase, and it was quite a lot of money. And then we discovered that they employ artists to install the exhibitions, common practice. And then we discovered that actually the artist that usually is painting the walls is a very interesting artist, and is actually, you know, doing the residency at Rijks Academy. And we did a studio visit with him, and we decided, okay, let's not paint these walls. Let's use this budget for the artist. Justin Gosker, that was his name, and he made an amazing artwork that looked like this kind of a black sphere, and he hid it in a kind of a emergency corridor of the institution that, of course, you know, you could enter anytime. And it was like a bomb, you know, that someone threw inside of the museum, and it kind of got stuck in it and never exploded. So that was great, and he actually could also do this artwork and find a good place for it, because he was working in this institution and painting these walls, you know. So he knew very well the whole space. So we thought it's a nice, you know, subversive move, you know. And then the walls were not painted, and, you know, I have a feeling no one noticed, you know, the walls were not painted. That's, of course, the Hunter Thompson, yeah, controversial figure, a collector of guns, a person that tried, I think, most of the existing drugs on Earth, but also a very insightful writer, commenting on the, I would say, growing conservatism of the American political scene in the, especially in the 80s, and this kind of a conservative turn in American politics. And so it was a. His texts are very, you know, he was, for example, traveling with this group Hell Angels for a long time and wrote a book about them. Yeah, so it's kind of a very engaged journalist, and also his texts are very, very well written, very funny. But it's not just, you know, like having fun for the sake of having fun, but there is a very interesting political analysis in the background. It's not super direct, but you can also, you know, find it there. And we like this kind of a combination there. Then at some point in the review, a topic of money is mentioned, because our journalist, she totally forgot that she was supposed to write this review, but accidentally she is in the museum, and she actually has no, she doesn't meet the requirements, you know, for a reviewer of an olfactory artwork, because she doesn't have a sense of smell. Yeah. But she still wants to write the review because she wants to earn the money. And this photograph refers to a project that we are currently doing at Temporary Gallery. And it's a project about working and living conditions of people in culture. The title of this project is And Only the Birds Fly First Class, which is a quote from a very beautiful song by Saul Williams called Mr. Nichols. I really recommend listening to that song. It's really amazing. It's very sad, actually. It's about a man that wants to commit suicide. But at the end of the song, it's like as if, you know, artist was talking to this man, Saul Williams, who probably you know him. He's an American poet and also musician, singer. And at the last part of the song is gives more hope. And there he has this amazing sentences about turning your face towards the sun and imagining a world in which only the birds fly first class. This is, of course, it's a poem. You can interpret it in several ways, but I thought it's a nice metaphor of this kind of a utopian vision of a world without classes, in which only the birds fly first class. So there are no humans that are in the first class. So I thought it's a good title for a project about living and working conditions of a group that is not in the first class, usually. So in this project, we started with an event on about side jobs of artists, which really exceeded our expectations because we had 140 visitors in a Zoom meeting. And then I realized that Zoom has a limit of 100. So I had to excuse myself by the 40 people that could not get in. But it was really like a breaking a taboo, because I think in Germany, from what I see, artists don't want to talk about their side jobs. But 99% of artists have these side jobs, yeah. So we kind of proposed to our audience, let's have a whole honest discussion about it. And an absolute highlight of this discussion was when Doris Fronapfel, a great artist from Cologne, she wrote her CV and she wrote it her life from a financial perspective. And she completely honestly wrote about her finances throughout her whole artistic career. And I think she's, around 60 years old. Yeah. So this was really like breaking the taboo. And then we were discussing how it is actually to have these side jobs, because it gives you, okay, you have less time for art, but it also gives you some autonomy. Yeah, you are not dependent on the art system. You can do whatever you want. Yeah. And actually in Germany, it's even easier than in other countries, like for example, in Poland, because here you can have a side job and it can be your part-time job. In Poland, very often you cannot, this would not cover your expenses having a half-time job and in many other countries. So in Germany, this is actually possible. And there are very interesting interactions between the side jobs that artists have and their artistic practices. There is this kind of a reciprocal influencing going on, reciprocal influence. So, and this project is it's a really broad project, and it's still going on. Recently, we had a very good workshop with Chris Dittel and Katia Krupennikova on curatorial fees, and we are currently running a course in permaculture, which is not only a gardening method, but also a whole philosophy, a whole ecological approach to the world. And I'm really super excited concerning what will come out of that, because we are also trying to think about like what we can take from permaculture and bring to the art scene, how our artistic and curatorial practices can be influenced by this kind of attitude to the world that I would maybe summarize as an attitude of care, where you regenerate the soil, you engage with your environment. There is a certain activist and political agenda to it. How this can, influence what we are doing in the arts. And this image, I really loved it. I found it accidentally online. It's a cotton dress workers union strike from '76. It's really, I think it's sometimes really great to see to really like study the history of the unions, because we think, it's kind of obvious what we have, like holidays that are paid when you are employed, and we forget how much of this was really a result of people really fighting for a very long time and sometimes not being successful and so on. So that's in the project this was used as an image for an event about how artists can collaborate with workers' unions. This is, of course, I don't know if you know what it is. It's a smell dispersing machine. It's actually, you pour the liquid in it, and then a kind of steam is being produced. So, and you can regulate it. So this is used actually. This is a machine that we used in Amsterdam. This is Ben Vautier's Total Art Matchbox, an artwork that I thought it's quite matching, this whole tension between artists and institutions. And I also like burn anything, keep last match for this match. So it also, you have to destroy the, but it's, you know, it still exists, you know, so no one did it. But I find it quite interesting, you know, that artists for quite a long time, you know, there was even this guy, Jeff Hayes. There is also a fragment of our publication that I gave the link to the publications online, was dedicated to the Jeff Hayes, who really proposed very seriously to bomb one of the museums in Belgium, like really like filed a serious proposal. Yeah, and I find it interesting to study this also to see how it changed, you know, because I have a feeling these times, like 70s, 80s, and also earlier, artists were very skeptical about institutions. And now I have a feeling that a lot of us, we really want to fit in, you know, we are not rebelling against the system. Yeah. And this is a very interesting change that happened. And maybe what would be interesting is to ask how to still work with institutions, but have some kind of a more subversive attitude and try to challenge them a bit and change them. That could be also interesting to ask. But yeah, I think now we have a different context than what these artists were doing with their matchboxes. This is a photo that I'm showing when I'm talking about identity of the institution that is being fixed, you know, that sometimes this identity is excluding certain types of artworks or artists. And I thought that this is maybe a good illustration of the one way of fixing the identity of the institutions. This is the CCA Wawel Castle and me and Jakub Wojnarowski as directors. And behind us, you see the logo of the institution. So the logo is the, you know, the identity now. So we have this great logo made by Jakub Skoczek, in which this is the contour of the castle from above, a scene from above, and then there are these different lines, like different discourses that are produced according to it. This photo, it was a bit of a small provocation, because I present this photo when I talk about Kienholz and the binary. And I don't know if you ever saw the binary, but it's a reconstruction of a bar. And actually, I don't like this artwork, but somehow I don't know why it's in the story. I think it's because I needed some kind of a big object that this journalist could bump into it so that her nose gets unblocked and she gets her sense of smell back. But the binary is this kind of there are many photos of it online. It's like a box, you can go into it, and then you see, you know, like figures of people, and it's I don't know if I don't like it, but somehow I thought, let's put something else there that is also related to the history of pop art. And this is actually a art fair, Art Cologne, in 2019, where Temporary Gallery could have a stand as a CCA, as a Kunstverein, because we are also a Kunstverein. And for this stand, I decided to use a very funny furniture that has been produced by three artists, Mateusz Okoński, Marta Sale, and Dominika Szczauba-Żegleń. And they were inspired by this kind of a postmodern architecture in Cologne and the cities around it. You know, like what I did when I first came to Cologne many years ago. I went to see the ice cream cone by Claes Oldenburg, you know, because I really like pop art, and especially pop art in public space. And in Cologne, there are some nice examples. And I have to say, I'm a big fan of the sun tanning studios in Cologne. I would love to do an exhibition there. You know, this Sonnen studios, they are like spaceships. It's amazing. This kind of a 90s, like I have a feeling that Cologne is very often like this kind of a bricolage of styles. You know, it's a city where, you know, things are mixed and people are really like, it's not so heavily controlled actually as a city. I have a feeling, you know, the public sphere, these buildings, you know, a lot of ugly buildings that were created very quickly, but there is some kind of a charm to it, to this kind of a vernacular aesthetic. So our installation was inspired by that, but also the artists, they wanted to refer to this fascination with American culture. it is very characteristic for Poland in the 90s, 80s, and later. It's basically, all this American TV series that everyone was watching. And I think in Germany they were also quite popular, like the Denver Clan, Baywatch. Yeah, I think it's like, I remember when I was a child, every Sunday I was going to visit my grandparents. We had a dinner and we were watching American TV series and soap operas. Yeah. So the artist reflected on it, and there is like, there is a, the sofa looks very cozy, but if you look, it has a symbol from X-Files on the side. There are these hamburgers because they, in this series, they go to the diner. When I went first time in my life to American diner in San Francisco some years ago, I felt as if I was in a movie, because I only know it from the movies. This chair in this kind of a peach color, it's called Laura Palmer. It's like the color of the skin because it's this kind of a vulnerable character. The other chair is called Alexis from the Denver Clan. And in fact, we are using this furniture, a temporary gallery. We have a kind of a special area for the audience where people can sit and talk, and sometimes our reading group takes place there. And the function of this furniture is really, they should be used and introduce a little bit different atmosphere in our institution. So we hope we'll soon be offering free coffee after the lockdown, I hope, so that people can drop in and stay a bit longer. And here we used basically this furniture at Art Cologne. And you see this kind of a stand on the right side with panties. It's actually inspired by David Hasselhoff from Baywatch, this kind of a figure. And this curtain that you see is a curtain by Magdalena Kita, and showing this beautiful woman who is super successful, and she's like has a lot of money and has amazing life. And this whole stand was set up for a collaboration with the initiative, and she was like BAM, which is supporting females working in culture. And what we are doing here, the publications you see are publications of Temporary Gallery, but also she was like BAM. And during Art Cologne, Magdalena Kita was painting the nails. It was like a nail salon. And we were engaging with conversations with the audience about how it is to be a female and work in culture. What kind of problems we experience, and how we can solidarize, and how the others can support us. And we have actually quite a lot of men that wanted their nails to be done. That was amazing. That something is really changing. Like nails, everybody can do the nails now. So that was a very nice collaboration. And on our Facebook website of Temporary Gallery, there's a whole album with photos from this installation, which are very, very funny. Okay, I try to speed up because I'm really talking too long. This was when I was talking about blood and the drops of blood. This is the painting of Bram de Munter that gave title to this exhibition that I mentioned, the green and pink one. And the title of the exhibition was taken from this painting, Heart of an Old Crocodile Exploding Over a Small Town. So you have a crocodile and his heart is exploding. It's actually a very sad painting. And you have this small town with animals and ghosts of animals. And you have people trying to make friends with crocodiles, one of the most dangerous animals in nature, actually. So little like communities of care again, but this time with animals. This is another project. This is what I'm talking about, the lawn and the grass outside of the museum. That's another project that I did with an artist that you might know because he lives in Cologne and also had his works were on view many times, also in Düsseldorf. His name is Jan Hüft, and he's doing amazing artworks in public space. This is a project that we did in Krakow, in which he produced a scarf that had symbols of two football teams that are in a very severe conflict with each other in Krakow, and there are lots of fights, people die. So this scarf has symbols of both teams. and it's placed on a lawn between the stadiums of both. Like on the left you have one, Cracovia, and on the right you have Wisła. So it's also in this kind of area in between these two stadiums. And on the scarf there was a phone number, and if someone called this phone number, they were reaching then a call center, and Jan managed to convince the people working at the call center to do a performance, namely refused to give any information about the project. So he actually introduced a lot of subversion into the call center, which function of the call center is usually to give information, but here they had to practice the art of refusal. And since they were not putting notes after every call, we don't know exactly how many people called them and what happened. As a result of this project, Jan produced a very nice book with short stories in which we try to imagine what actually happened in our art project, because we don't know exactly. So I wrote a story which is a letter of resignation of a woman that works in call center, and she decides to quit the job after this project because she's practicing the art of refusal of giving information, and she starts to enjoy it more and more. So that's the project of Jan Hooft. This is an artwork by Maggie Rustamova, an artist from Belgium, from an exhibition I curated. I will say a little bit more at the end about it. It's kind of an act of identification with a plant. This is a chrysanthemum plant. It's supposed to be very resistant plant, very often planted at cemeteries. And here it's this state of being transferring it from one pot to another pot, and the artist kind of empathized with the plant as a person with migrant background, changing countries as this plant is changing locations. That's again a plant project exhibition that we presented at Temporary Gallery last year, Florophilia Revolution of Plants. This exhibition, actually a lot of this exhibition is still online. There is a link to a Google Drive on our website, and it's possible to see a very thorough documentation of it, some of the movies, and there is also a guided tour I did on YouTube about this exhibition, so it's still possible to experience it, although it's not in our space anymore. This is a collection of plants by Igor and Ivan Bukharov. These are like healing and poisonous plants that we were presenting in this exhibition. And the whole show was about learning from plants and being inspired by plants, especially in terms of political activity and different ways of collaboration. And this is another picture of this exhibition. As you see, again, a quite extensive exhibition design developed by Mateusz Okoński, and an amazing sculpture by Ines Dujak, showing this kind of a black ghost entering the exhibition space and bringing a bouquet made out of poisonous flowers. The theme of sleep, that's an artwork by two artists, Krzysztof Jastrubczak and Łukasz Kaczmarek. It's called Artists at Work. I will not comment any further. And the last photo, it's another exhibition that I curated related to plants. Came at the end of the reading, where I'm talking about the past, reimagining the past and thinking about the past, and this kind of that it's a kind of a futile request not to do it. That is impossible not to think about the past. And this was an exhibition titled Florophilia Plants as Archives, that I curated at Academy of the Arts of the World in Cologne, my previous workplace. Was a part of a bigger project about plants and politics. And this exhibition that I showed earlier, Florophilia Revolution of Plants, was also part of this project. And in this show, it was not about learning from plants, but it was more about plants as witnesses of political events. So we had lots of artworks that were somehow affected by history. Very important part of history for this exhibition was the history of colonial expansion and how plants were used to. And also, for example, about botanical gardens as these beautiful places that, when I visit a new town, I always go to botanical garden. I love botanical gardens. They are great, but they also have a bit dark history because to many of them, plants were transported from the colonies. They were then objects of research, investigation, and then, for example, the best ones were replanted again in the colonies. So I read, for example, that in one of the botanical gardens in the Netherlands, there is a coffee plant that was this mother of coffee plantations in Indonesia, where the Dutch forced local people to grow coffee for profit, of course, and so that they could earn more money, basically. So it's like really a big topic. I could talk 3 hours about this project and different artworks, but it was very interesting, to look at the human history from the perspective of plants and show the artworks of artists that also are, reflecting on it, So this is it. These are all the projects that I wanted to mention. I hope it gives a good overview. Now we also have an exhibition at Temporary Gallery that is related to narrativity, and it's the last days. It's the finissage is next week. But we have a lockdown, but if someone would like to see it, you can still write to us, and maybe individually you can see it.
We can make a test before, maybe.
It's closed. Yeah, like in general, officially it's closed. But
okay.
If
you
write
so just
individually,
private,
we try to. Then it's super private, and I think it's still possible. So if someone really wants to see and haven't seen, there is still a time until next Sunday. I think it's like the 22nd of. Let me see, 23rd of May. It's still possible to see it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sounds great.
We've already seen it, so we can definitely recommend to visit it.
Thank you.
For sure. Thank you so much for your talk. I would say let's make like a 10-minute break and then do the Q&A session. Okay. Thanks for